Today's first topic is going to be on choosing the perfect domain, and hopefully you'll go away with a bit more knowledge about getting your domain and choosing the right extension and everything that's involved in a domain, because it is also part of your brand too, so it's very important. Of course, I've already introduced myself. My name is Lawrence Tilley. I run the website company called Design for Digital based here at the Guild. And we help small to medium enterprises with their websites, and we thought this was the perfect opportunity to really allow people and small businesses to understand more about their websites. So maybe Tom could help me with the domain extension.
I just put the bit at the end.
Well, exactly, it is. The bit at the end, your domain extension, it's the .com, the .co.uk.
A bit after the dot, I just know.
Yeah, that's right. But there's lots of dots, don't forget, in a domain name, .co.uk. There's two dots in that
course,
as well,
yeah.
so it can be quite distracting. But it's usually the top level domain extension, we call it. So yes, right at the end, and it's makes it very easy to distinguish as well from either a location or whether it's a global kind of website too. So that is your extension in a nutshell. And Alice, have you heard of a subdomain?
I have, and I remember we had lots of conversations
That's
about
what people getting lost in.
Is it the bit after the slash?
Well, that's a subfolder. So
No, I remember.
Don't worry, yeah.
Yeah,
I'll help
Put
you.
the bit at the beginning.
Yes, it can be the bit at the beginning, so before your domain. So if you've got, for example, my domain is Design for Digital. I'm not used to writing on board, as you can tell. .com. Okay, so this is actually a subdomain. www is a subdomain of the domain designfordigital.com. So you can have any amount of subdomains you want as well. So you could say, for instance, you're holding an event like me, I could have website surgery, or I could just have abbreviated to WS and .designfordigital.com, and that can redirect to a certain folder on the hosting of the website, and people can go to it a lot easier than having a /. But it's an alternative way of using it. But I'll show you some more clever ways of that when we get around to domain hacks as well. And I presume, Tim, you've not heard of IP addresses before.
Well, actually, I have heard of them.
Oh, good.
I actually don't know what they are, but I have heard of them.
Yes, well, that's fine, as long as you've heard of them before.
It's not a complete alien concept, but please don't worry, crack on, because these words are used around me, and I just want to start to know what they mean. So
Yes, yeah, of course. IP addresses are basically ways that computers can communicate with each other, and it's based on a series of numbers. So think of it as a telephone number, and you've got a home address, haven't you? You've got a home, and that has an address and a telephone number. Well, this is an IP address you might be familiar with. It's part of your router at home, if you want to communicate with your router. But that would connect to your home, essentially. But it's not always great, say you want to sell or talk to people in the streets and say, oh, here's my number. Well, also it's easier just to say my address is 8 High Street, and that will connect to your home as well. So this is the way that computers talk to the home, but in human terms, a domain name is essentially your address, and it makes it a lot easier for people to actually say, right, my address is designfordigital.com. It's much easier than remember 192.168.1.1, and you can come to my website. So essentially that is an IP address. And domain hacks, have you heard of domain hacks before? They are basically a clever way of splitting up what we just explained here, the subdomain, the name, and the extension. So my favourite example here is called Delicious, as you can see, but actually the domain name is isio.us, but they've actually created a subdomain of del, to create delicious as you read it, but with the dots in between. So it's a very technically clever way of creating a website, but is it actually useful to people these days? Are they actually going to remember it? It's more of a gimmick, domain hack. So actually these days, that domain hack now redirects to delicious.com because people are more used to that .com, but it's a very clever way of doing it. So that's essentially what domain hacks are. And there is a website you can go to find domain hacks if you want to have something like that. Great for techie startups if they want to have something very clever. And that's xona.com/domain hacks if that's any use. xona.com and then /domain hacks. What would we consider to be an ideal length for a domain name, do you think? Anyone got any ideas? Don't worry if you haven't.
Well, I think less than 9 letters.
Yes, no, that's perfectly good. I essentially say that 6 to 10 characters, or alphanumeric characters, are the best, really. A lot of the ones under that, 5 and under, and especially popular words in the dictionary, have all gone, especially for .coms and .co.uk's. So having a 6 to 10 letter domain name is really going to be the best way of getting your domain name that you really want, the perfect one. Okay, so next one is the length. How short should it be? Is it short enough? This is a good example, Bing.com. I don't know if you're aware of Bing.com. It is the alternative to Google search, and it's run by Microsoft. And they came up with that idea of Bing.com being nice and short, but it's that moment of inspiration, when you actually, I've come up with that idea. So type it in, and bing, there it is, there's your answer. So it's a good short URL for people to remember. I think that's a good example. I don't know if you have any other examples that you may use or have seen before.
Interesting. It is a good example, and it's a much cleverer word than Google, but Google's much more successful, isn't it? So
Well, yes,
it's only one element of the ingredients, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah, and we've all come to know that Google is search, haven't we? But that's through lots of marketing, lots of branding, and essentially they were regenerating their search terms because I think it was Microsoft Search before, so it wasn't exactly a catchy name.
But Google wasn't a real word either, was it?
No, exactly.
No.
That's what I mean. It's yeah.
So, yeah, I think on the other way, this is a real word that they
Yes.
claimed was that's a new word.
Yeah, so just make sure that you've got length and you've thought about those 6 to 10 characters really. That's the ideal. But you can go more, don't worry. I mean, mine is about 16, designed for digital.com, but it has, a good relevance to keywords as well. And that's what I'm going to go on to now. The impact keywords can have. So do you think keywords inside your domain actually help search engines list you and rank you better?
It used to, I don't know if they do anymore.
Exactly. It used to be one of the most important
Yeah,
things.
it's
I don't know
kind
if it's
of-
important anymore.
Yeah, I think you're quite right, really. A keyword doesn't have any benefit in your domain these days. Yes, it's very good because you'll see that from this diagram here, these are search-related terms, and basically half of those search-related terms will have domains with keywords in them, but also other domains in that search term wouldn't have any of the related keywords people are searching for. So if they're searching for website surgery, for example, you may find websitesurgery.com and .co.uk would come up in there, but half of the others would be other related ones. So it could be google.com / learn about your website. It doesn't actually include that keyword, so it's not necessary. And also you could go the wrong way and put too many keywords in, and it wouldn't be relative to your actual business. So that would actually make Google and other search engines like Bing realize that actually you're pushing those keywords in for no apparent reason other than to entice people into your business when it's not relevant. So it could actually be detrimental to your domain and your website if you try and put those keywords in. So definitely think about them, and try and, if you want to include one is probably a good idea. And it all really depends on the topic that you've got for your website and the brand as well. For example, design for digital. That's got 2 keywords in there, but it doesn't necessarily talk about web design in there, but it does include design, so that's a keyword that I've used. That's just one example.
But you haven't been penalised because presumably you talk about design and digital all over your
Yes,
page,
yes,
so
exactly.
they know that
Yeah.
design for digital isn't a soap manufacturer.
Exactly, yeah. So as long as you get those meta tag values, the description, the titles and the pages, having content with those keywords in, then they wouldn't necessarily downgrade your website, but they wouldn't improve it either. It's more about for the domain in that way. And one last thing, keywords will also come up bold even in the URL on searches, so yeah, don't forget about that. I'll go on to location next, and is that important, do you think? Is it important to your user or to your business? You could be a shop, and if you've only got one shop in a certain location, say in Bath, then I think...
So I'm on this maybe, I'd say probably 30
Yes, I thought you might be interested.
This is where my deals come from, Alice.
Yeah, so if you're a shop in Bath, you may want to have a .co.uk, you may even, like we were just discussing earlier, .bath eventually. I'm sure there'll be an extension for that. Or you can actually include Bath in the domain, and for this example, this is a very popular deals-based site, so people can buy shopping deals, but they actually distinguish themselves from the generic deals sites from the US, which are very heavily populated on the internet when you do a search. And they've included it in their brand name, in their domain, and not necessarily in their extension this time. They feel that Hot UK Deals says it straight away without having a .co.uk. Essentially, that's adding another 2 characters to that domain, so it actually makes it shorter for them. So yeah, it really helps focus your business. But if you're a worldwide business, of course you'll want a .com, but you'll probably want to have the .co.uk. We touched on location. I think it's fairly important depending on the business that you're using. It makes customers feel a bit more welcomed and relevant. Next thing we'll go on to is how distinctive or memorable your domain is, and is it memorable in a good way? We could see whether the extension again is reflective of your business. You can actually get .pizza now. So if you're a pizza shop in Bath, you may want to have Mr. Luigi .pizza, and that would be better than Luigi's Pizza Company in Bath.com. It's a bit more catchier. You can see it, and I'd say the target audience looking for that kind of pizza are probably students or people who are looking very tech savvy, and they'd be able to understand that domain extension. But as you can see, there are lots of different, what we call GTLDs, generic top level domains they're called. And I'll just go through a brief summary of some of the most popular ones that you've probably seen and you may not know about. .co is an abbreviation for some people as company or commerce or community, but actually it was a domain extension for Columbia, but until they released it to the World Wide Web a bit more and relaxed the restriction on it just for people in Columbia. Now people can have .co. I've got my own personal tilly.co that my wife uses for emails, but not necessarily is it a great thing because a lot of people expect, is that .co.uk at the end, or is it missing the N? So
I've done that.
It's always tricky, isn't it?
What's that?
Yeah. Info is for informational sites. .net is for more technical infrastructure kind of sites, and then .org, commercial organisations should really buy those kind of domain names. You can get .org, .uk. .biz says what it does on the tin, so that's for business or commercial use. .me is for blogs or personal websites where people just want to showcase what they do, maybe even link it to Facebook, just redirect it to their Facebook page. And .io is great for startups, especially in the Guild, and you're probably thinking, why would you have .io? Like, it sounds very strange, doesn't it? .io as a domain extension, but it's very popular these days for startups because it actually represents the ones and zeros in the digital technology sphere. So I and O look very similar to the 1 and 0, so that's essentially what .io means. Now, making it distinctive, could you actually read it out to someone on the phone easily without spelling it out? The amount of times I've actually spoken to customers and they give me their domain name and I've had to go, oh, sorry, could you just spell that out for me? I don't know how it's spelled. Or it includes words I'm not familiar with, or it could actually be a number. Is that the digit 9 or is that the number, the word 9? So you don't want to have people you don't want to spell it out, because don't forget that's a waste of your time as well as theirs. That brings me on to what to avoid. Let's think about this domain here. bestteammascot.com or .io. Now what do you think, when you look at that to read, is a mistake?
Those double letters.
That's right. Those double letters are confusing to the eye to see. Sometimes they can work, sometimes, well, a lot of the time they don't work. And yes, you don't want to get rid of that, but you also, you've got to think about how that affects people writing it down or seeing it actually in the URL bar on their screen when they're going through, and how it's memorable in that aspect. My next point is that hyphens and numbers are a bad thing really to include in your domain, unless it really is part of your brand and everyone knows you as that. You could have 24/7 at the end of your website domain because you're open 24/7, but is it actually necessary? With my domain, Design for Digital, some people I thought could get confused by that and think it's the digit. So I've also bought Design for the Digit Digital. And yes, it's not great, but I've also found that things like Twitter limit me to 14 characters for a username. So actually I need to use that digit 4. So in some ways, there are good and bad ways about using that number, but you've got to think about whether it's relevant to your domain. So try and avoid it where you can. And is it cost effective? Try and avoid those very premium domains. I don't know if you've ever tried buying a domain and seen those listings to the side when you start doing your search. Oh yes, you could buy this domain which sounds very close to what you want, and it's a .com or .co.uk you've always wanted, but they're asking silly money for it, £2,000 just for the domain, and then you have to register it. So you've got to be aware that these people will do it and try and sell these domains. And with all these extensions coming up, you don't need to worry about buying that expensive domain. You want to think about how actually I can go away from that. If you're just starting the company, it's great. You can just ignore those and think, right, I'll do the search for the particular keywords or the brand names that I really want that aren't too popular. And we talked about, is it memorable in a good way? Was it great? Having a slang meaning in your business name isn't necessarily a great thing, is it? It might be good if you've started it very young and you have grown into a bigger organisation, but you don't want to have that. You may want to move on your business and say, right, I want to be a bit more business-like rather than very slang and very young and youthful. I wanted my business to, I've seen lots of people use very trendy words in their domain which attaches to their business, but of course that will change over time. You'll grow older and you want to be a bit more different. So definitely think about things to avoid in that sense, the words, the trending kind of words, because they'll disappear, those trending words as well over time and be less useful. So cool and things like that, probably want to avoid. Watch out for intellectual property as well, conflicts. Hopefully you won't ever get that problem, but there's a good example. I used to work for the company Corgi, who made their model cars, and for instance, if you were called John Corgi, you could actually buy Corgi.com if you wanted to, if it was available. And as long as you're using it for your own personal use, brands like Corgi, who make those model cars, wouldn't be able to take it from you. But hang on, if you thought, actually, I can make a lot of money here by putting my website to good use and selling those toys or talking about those toys and relating to it, I'm okay because I've still got my name, it's my surname, but actually that brand were well within their rights to go to the registrar like Nominet and say, actually this person's using our brand name to sell and we want that domain, so you could lose that domain. So it's something to think about with your intellectual property, you've got to get that right. So, hopefully I haven't bamboozled you too much by all this information. So what have we learnt? We've learnt that length is very important, 6 to 10 characters, and we've got to keep it simple, haven't we? Don't go overboard with your domain. Keywords are slightly important, but don't put too many in, don't spam it, and if it's not relevant, avoid it altogether. Location can be useful to your consumers, especially if you have a shop location or if you're doing something like Tim's doing and going into different areas and property as well. So that's very useful. And is it distinctive enough? Is it memorable in a good way? Try and avoid those slang words, but make it very nice and short and distinctive. And of course, avoid putting in hyphens, numbers, and making those mistakes where we've got 2 M's joining words or 2 T's joining words. I think that's the best way to go about it and avoid IP right issues as well. I'm sure you do some research anyway before you even looked into brand names. But essentially that's it, and don't leave your customers frustrated. At the end of the day, you want them to come to your website, and a domain, whilst it's only part of your website, it's the first thing they see on a business card or a flyer or on an advert online. So they'll want to trust you from that domain name.